Great. Wonderful. Lovely to meet you. To start off with, could you please say your name and tell me where you are?
Shanaaz, and I am in Pretoria, the capital city of South Africa.
Wonderful. And the first big question is, who are you as a human being? And that can be anything you would like to share, from qualities about yourself, your fundamental values, passions, whatever you would like.
Yeah, I am a human being that's got my biggest identity markers as a Muslim. And living into my humanity as a Muslim is that my sense of purpose gets defined through that identity, and that my purpose is to make a difference as a human being, to live out a sense of duty, building community, being in community, a deep sense of justice and equality in how I live out my own humanity. And how that has shaped who I'm becoming, and try to live into this notion of the role that life has, chosen for me, and that I find great meaning in, is to bring improvement in spaces, to make change. Through my own childhood, I wrestled with bringing change in my own reality, in my own family, having an early voice about what's okay and what's not okay in the face of oppression. So I think it sparked in me a sense of what's my rights here, and how do we co-create the rights of living in a non-violent space. And so my advocacy was born early, and my childhood interrupted as my agency grew. And I think that way of being in the world has served me and has followed me, and have shaped me, and have helped me to grow skills and talents and awareness to do that in various ways and grow my own capacities. Yeah.
So I'm curious what one of your earlier experiences of co-creating nonviolence and change would have been. What did that look like? I'm seeing exactly you right now, just a little bit smaller.
Yeah. I grew up in a family context of where my mother was the workhorse of the extended family. She helped to develop and grow a small household business of selling fruit and veg to help keep many of the other families of our extended tribe alive. And she and my father, their marriage broke down when I was 8. And it was a sad divorce, and my mother spiraled out of control in her own hurt and disappointment. And she remarried a man that wasn't good for her and not good for us either. and he was a drug addict. And she had to work to feed his habit. And he created havoc on the home front. Domestic violence, abuse, and so on. So I lost my mother to that. She became distracted and swallowed up in that world. And I had to become the mother and protect my younger 2-year-old sister from what could happen to her. So I had to be the vigilant one. I had to have my radars and sensors up, and I had to learn to physically fight at the age of 8, 9, 10, so that I can be the protector in the house and stand up to the aggressor, because my mother has been so traumatized. My younger sister, later came 2 younger brothers from that marriage. And I was saying, no, this is not what I'm going to, you're not going to terrorize me. I'm not going to be afraid of you. And, finding ways and strategies to survive. If I could have gotten my mother through divorce and sitting in so many legal aid offices with my mother, with a lawyer, explaining to her how an interdict works, what she needs to do. I visited the police station very often, knew how it works, fantasized about being a police officer because I could have access to some form of power, authority, a gun, that could help repel. So that was our reality for a long time, up to my teenage years. And so I learned how to fight in various forms, and it hardened me. And all of that hard dexterity of, surviving and having to be in combat mode. I had to, in my adult years, had to learn that, yes, that served me, and I'm no longer in a war zone. I can relax that. I can rest. I can discover other parts of me. I can deploy my skills differently. I need to get in touch with the softer side of me, and not just, bring it on.
Sounds like you had to fight your way into those kinds of spaces, though.
Yeah, it served me well in that the world, growing up as a Black Muslim woman in South Africa, you are the other. You are excluded. The system, the regime was making me invisible and less than. So learning how to fight from an early stage and learning how to use institutions and myself so that I could say no to what I don't want and be very clear about what I do want and go after it, and become resourceful in how do I need to, what's my strategy, who and how, and so on. So it helped to give me the ability to become resilient, and to bounce back. And I think my resilience was most tested, or tested in a new way, let me say, at the age of 17, when I was shot by a boy playing with a gun, and that left me paralyzed, a paraplegic. Oh. And that was a new reality for me to contend with and figure out. And okay, defending myself from a seating position now, because the household, the divorce have not yet happened, and it was still my waging war. And I'm now more physically vulnerable, and I had to figure that out. So yeah, that was another big chapter, very defining chapter that opened me to a world that I would not have otherwise engaged if it wasn't through my wheelchair. So my wheelchair became my biggest blessing and my biggest teacher. And my biggest teacher in learning how to use my vulnerability, not as a victim, um, but to learn to, from a Gestalt stance, the paradoxical theory of change, manifesting in so many different ways for me to learn and grow.
I think you're much closer to understanding that the same way that Arnold Baser was himself than many people.
Yes, indeed. And that's it was a important breakthrough learning for me, not just understanding who's the owner of that theory and his own story, but I think the story landed more powerfully for me when one of my Gestalt mentors helped to tell me a story to get me more in touch with the paradoxical theory of change in a new way. And I remember my teacher, one of my many beautiful teachers. And in this story, I wish to give him, credit and name him for it. Joe Melnick from the US, from the Gestalt International Study Center. I was on a Gestalt International OD program with Edwin Neves, Sonia Neves, and that whole crew. And we were sitting in South Africa, in Cape Town, in a hotel. And Joe and I had this conversation in the midst of a large room with lots going on in it. But it was as if, no one else was around us, because this conversation created just such a focused and intimacy. So the story goes like this. There was the CEO that was preparing to make a major pitch to her board. And usually she lets her team run the machinery of getting the board packs together and so on. But this particular pitch she felt very invested in, high stakes for her. And she got personally involved and getting ready. The night before the board presentation, she goes to a mentor to do a dry run. And she makes this amazing presentation with all the bells and whistles. And she knows she hit a home run. And she feels very proud of this piece of work because she put a whole lot of, herself in it. And she's eagerly awaiting for the feedback from her mentor, anticipating that the mentor's going to say, you got this, go for it, great job. The mentor sits there quietly, which feels like forever, saying nothing. And the CEO gets impatient. Come on, say something already. And still the silence feels like, you got to say something now. And the mentor shakes her head. And the CEO says, why that? What? What do you mean? The mentor finally says, they're not going to buy it. The CEO says, that's nonsense. Can't be. It's impossible. Ask me, quiz me, any question about this thing. I will answer you back to front. I got this. There's nothing that they can ask me that I don't know, right? I've got all the angles covered. There's no holes in this thing. And the mentor says, they're still not going to buy it. And the CEO is frustrated, irritated. No, you don't make sense. Can't be. There's no logic in what you are saying. And the mentor says they're not going to buy it because you did not make them love you. That piece landed for me. What it meant to me at that stage of being me was that I had to work so damn hard at life. And being a woman, a Black woman with a disability, navigating my world, I had to use a lot of that energy to be taken serious in the world that I managed to penetrate. And I was trading on my competence because competence was the only thing that my worth was being judged on and that I judged my worth on.
Right. You could be right. You could make people believe you. You could, yeah.
As a woman, you have to work 3-4 times as hard in a space, because the odds are stacked against you. And in apartheid South Africa, if you're going to get anywhere, you're going to be exceptionally good, in order to get through. And so I was in positions of authority, in leadership roles that life has offered me early on in various, formal positions. And showing up in this Gestalt community, that was how I showed up, competence. And, there was no other parts of me that I revealed because my guard had to always be up. And I was very clumsy at learning to, create safety for myself in space and, reveal my own vulnerabilities. And, people don't love competence. They can admire it, they can respect it, they don't love it. In fact, they can quite resent you for it, because showing up as Superwoman, I've got this, is showing everyone else that show me how human you are, show me your flaws. That's what make human people connect with other human beings. And I had to experiment, I had to work, I had to play with that part of myself that I was estranged from, that I was not allowing. And I had to learn to get in touch with my vulnerability and work and do the work and take my butt into therapy for a long time and do the work. And yeah.
So I hear it very differently, the CEO story of, allowing someone to love you versus doing what's required to be superficially loved or accepted.
Yes. To attend to my own unfinished business of doing my work from a different place inside of me, and thereby evoking parts of my presence that can bring me the release and the connection that's meaningful and authentic. I'll never be a butt kisser. I don't know how to do that. Right? My radars for that is very sharp, and I won't allow myself to go there. I can do the charm offensive, if it needs be. So yeah.
So I don't know if this question makes sense, but I mean, what conditions do you require to feel safe and comfortable to show up with another human being? Because it's not just you and your work. I mean, what does the other person have to do or be?
Yeah. I like that question. Let me think a bit more. So, in any interaction, I'm going to trust myself enough to trust my gut, to pay close attention to my gut, and I'm going to enter with a sense of what am I bringing and what do I want from this interaction. And I'm going to come with a sense of what's possible here. I think what I'm continuously managing is about, am I seeking relationship or am I seeking to get a piece of work done? And being clear, strategic and intimate, what's going on here for me? And managing
I can almost hear the little voice going, we are not friends.
Yeah, being very clear about, okay, what's this about? Mm-hmm. And being clear about, what's possible here, right? I'm not gonna come and look. I can be friendly, I can be genuine, I can be authentic, and I can be sincere. But if my radars go up about, I think trust gets built. Mm-hmm. And given my childhood, given how I'm wired, my need for safety is a high threshold, right? And so I have my places of safety, my confidants, my small circle of trusted, respected people, older women and men, significantly older women and men, that I would go to and say, I have no clue, I messed up, I feel, lost in between, help me think, help me see. And these are long-standing relationships. And on a bit of humor side, when people want to become friends with me, I come with a warning, right? I'm a shit friend. Let me just let you know that up front. I don't do high intensity, right? If you're the high intensity friend and it's going to keep score how many times I contact you, and you're going to get upset with me for forgetting your birthday, and if you are not happy with us probably talking twice a year and we can pick up right where we left off, then I'm not the kind of friend for you. So I'm a bit shit that way.
I don't think I'd use that label, but sure. You have criteria. I'm hearing you definitely have some very established criteria in your life. So about some of these other human beings in life, not to make, an exclusive kind of list, but is there someone who comes to mind in particular who you would say has been a significant influence on you or in you?
The man I'm married to, Shoaib. I met him when I was 17 years old. 3 months, no, a month and a half after being shot. And he was using, he was a paraplegic, he is a paraplegic as well. And at the time when I met him, he was sitting in the wheelchair for 10 years already. Wow. And I could not think in terms of 10 years at that time. I thought I was going to be dead by the end of that year. I could not see a vision for my life, all the dreams and things that I wanted to do. And he was studying at the University of Cape Town. Instantly, I decided, well, UCT, that's where I'm going next year. I was in my final year at school. So he reactivated a sense of what's possible. He was driving his own car. I've always wanted to drive my own car. And I thought, how does this work? You know?
I'm assuming you drive your own car.
Yes, I do. And so, you know, he opened up a world where I could live myself into and, you know, not let up on my dreams and discover new dreams and build, you know, so he, you know, he modeled and he showed for me a way of what's possible. And we built up an extraordinary friendship. And I fell instantly in love with him the moment I met him. And he kept me waiting for 7 years before we got married because I had a lot of growing up to do, you can imagine.
Mhm.
And we've just celebrated being married for 30 years this July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He deserves more medals. I don't want to be married to me.
That's why you found somebody else.
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't usually ask people about their defects, but what is it that would make you not want to be married to yourself?
I am a high intensity person. I have many OCD issues.
Sounds pathologizing, isn't it? Just you have a need for things to be structured.
Yeah, we balance each other out very well, you know, and that makes it possible for us to be in this beautiful, amazing relationship for a long time. So yeah, makes for yeah, makes for a beautiful dance. So yeah, sometimes
Those are really horrible reasons to not be with yourself. I'm sorry. I think those are wonderful qualities, but intensity,
sure,
intensity can, you know, have an impact on some people, but personally, I find it wonderful. So
yeah.
okay. So I am curious what you would say about how you've come to understand and experience yourself in terms of gender or as a woman, or however you would describe yourself in those areas.
Mm. My sense of gender justice was born at an early age, given my home life, given the sense of dominance, power, abuse, physically, and so on. So, as a young girl, a teenager, a young woman growing up, I made important decisions very early on about I'm not going to be another statistic of an early, as a teenage pregnant young woman, you know, as part of the reality of many working class, you know, oppressed communities drop out of education, you know, become a mother of a few children from different fathers that end up in jail and so on. So I did not want that for myself, neither for my younger sister. And I was not going to be dependent and dominated by a man. So I'm going to use education as a weapon to protect me and to give me options and choices and freedom to design the kind of life and have access to the kinds of means and resources to build a better life for my mother and my siblings. So that became an important motivator, and to steer and to negotiate relationships on that basis with a very high sense of challenging authority when authority is deployed in ways of not making sense of, be it arguing in the classroom about, when gender justice is not present, about, what are the rules of engagement, and the stereotypes about boys and girls and options. And that compounded with my early acquisition of my disability. So that got me into the disability rights movement from a very early age, as an activist. So looking at the women's movement in South Africa, and being part of the political consciousness of building, a women's coalition in South Africa to be part of the, designing the democracy that we want, and where women's rights fit into that. I was one of the, the younger women as part of building the National Women's Coalition, and held leadership positions in the Women's National Coalition, where I would be the chairperson of convening different political parties, working out what's our position in going into the negotiations, and, legislatively, what kind of gender machinery would we want in South Africa, and so on. And that helped me to develop skills of, working in political spaces and ensuring that women with disability within the women's movement is clearly on the agenda, in a very direct way, and challenging the women's movement in how they locate the issues of disability, and mainstreaming the issues of disability within health, right? The issues of, young women, girls in special education that get sterilized, because, what are you going to do with a child? What's your chances of getting married? Pregnancy is not for you, and all of these issues that came with those kinds of discrimination. So that's been a big part of my growth and my work, and having many mentors in the women's movement that have opened other doors and access, and spaces, to help grow my leadership competence and capacity from a very early age. So I grew up in the women's movement. I grew up in the disability movement in South Africa.
Just sitting here, is there a single aspect of your identity that you've been able to take for granted and not have to actively push to be able to live?
I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question, but let me try and say this, and then you see if that's what you have, what your question has in mind. So I think there were parts of my disability, there were times that I've taken my disability that I've ignored my disability, right? So, and I've learned, when I became more aware of it, I've learned to become more playful with it in a strategic way. And an example of that is, so holding senior government positions and you're dealing with an unreasonable politician that's really not an example of effective, sound leadership. And this politician uses abuses their power of wanting to convene meetings in the evenings that would effectively start at 11 p.m., wanting it to go on until 4 a.m. And that's crazy, right? So I became playful because working with an unreasonable boss, I had to become really savvy and not, and navigate the political terrain. So I would check out with his bodyguards. Does he have steps at his house? Does he, what's the layout kind of sense? Would he have a bathroom that you think I could get in and close the door behind me? And I can reasonably anticipate that the answer to those are going to be no, right? Give or take. And then I would say to him, Minister, I would love to attend your meeting. I need for you to make sure that my dignity won't be compromised, that I could enter your house. I can use a bathroom most of all. And I've been sitting in this wheelchair for many years. I need to lie down out of this chair at a certain time to avoid pressure sores. Can you help me to achieve that, right? In the facility where you want us to have the meeting. And then you'd say, yeah, I don't think it's going to work. I told him, okay, I'll catch up. Let me know the key things you want me to take on after the meeting. So much so that colleagues would pass me notes in meetings, help us to get out of this meeting, find a way out. So that my legitimate needs, I could use it to say that this is not okay for me. These are some needs that I have, and I'm going to use it. And, it was only after I could allow myself to do more of that it made sense that I could not brave it out and tough it out at my own expense, at the expense of my own health, which should at times be pretty ridiculous.
Like leveraging reason and allowing things that are absurd to sort of fall on their own, like not having to actively push them over.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about age? How has your experience of the aging process been? How are you enjoying or not enjoying the age you're at right now?
I'm turning 54 in a few days' time, inshallah, God willing. And I've had such a moment when I realized I'm no longer the youngest person in the room, because that has been such a feature in so many places for so long. And working in an intergenerational, multi-generational setting, when I would work and grow and mentor colleagues that's my son's age. And it's like, what? So age, I've had, my career peaked early, very early. So I held senior government positions in my mid-30s, right? So peaking early has its great advantages, but also, okay, so been there, done that, what now? So I can now hold roles in institutions. That's not at the top because I've been there, I've done that. And I can look and work with executives and support them in their roles, and look at them and laugh at myself and see me in them and in their struggles, and being more useful to myself and them in helping to navigate their roles, right? And I've learned, very early on that I'm not the role, the role is not me, and being able to learn to separate that. And that has served me well. So I like the freedom that the stage gives me now, where I'm making role choices from a different place. right? I'm no longer nurturing ambition in the way of climbing the corporate ladder. I'm nurturing ambition of growing stronger institutions, building leaders within the institutions. And that's always been my agenda whilst I've been in roles of particular formal authority, but differently. Now I head up a management and leadership academy for a big, metropolitan municipality in Pretoria. And I love the freedom and the reach that it gives me to penetrate the system, using learning and development as a big intervention. So this role allowed me to live out my passions and doing a range of creative things in the system.
That sounds to me like just coming into the peak of things. I mean, that might have been the peak of hustle culture in your 30s, but I don't think that was fullness. I think you may be hiding a secret there and actually peaking.
Yeah, I love how you say it, Heather. And it's true. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying. I'm breaking boundaries. I'm having corporate politics battles in new ways. I can ignore my boss, right, and continue doing my own thing, and keep things alive in the system with, not feeling afraid that my job's on the line, right? Because I can create other jobs, right? So the power
freedom
that
and that
bosses,
balance, yeah, the
please say
power,
that
freedom,
again.
balance, all of that. That sounds much more peak than maximum performance level.
Yes.
That's, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I was saying to someone that I spoke to recently, I can, I can certainly do this for the next couple of decades, however long I have. So yes, I'm definitely in a sweet spot.
So where did Gestalt come into all of this for you? How did you find each other?
Yeah, Gestalt found me when I was 34, 35, 20 years ago, when I was in a very high profile demanding role within government. And I was leading 2 key portfolios and needing to build a leadership team. I've always been passionate about leadership development. I got exposed to leadership development in my mid-20s when I got to be part of the W.K. Kellogg International Leadership Program. And one of my favorite mentors, that was our first woman deputy president, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, she was a political player. And when Kellogg came into the country, they brought, different resources and stuff with them, and they brought this program. And she said to me, this program is applications are closing tomorrow. Your application's got to be in, right? And I got it in, I got fortunately selected. And that helped me to really get in touch with my own leadership skills, growing in practice, but also become a student of leadership, right? So getting into this role early was about building a leadership team to execute this very demanding portfolio of housing, delivery, and local government. And using these levers, to ensure we make a difference in people's lives and solving the housing problem and contributing towards solving the housing problems with proactive and pro-poor policies and so on. And there were two big things that I chose to start this leadership cohesion work, was about making sure that my team, get a good dose of understanding our individual and collective emotional intelligence to do this work. Because we cannot be public servants that are desensitized, right, in just being a bureaucrat and doing this work, right? We've got to bring our humanity to these roles and understand who we are serving and narrow the distance between us and the people that we say we are creating solutions and programs for. So it was part of that activists in terms of how we rehumanize the bureaucracy. And that was the essential drive behind it. And the service provider that I brought on to do the emotional intelligence training with me and my team was a Gestalt practitioner, Chantal Wiley, and one of our parliamentarians, Lachisa Tsinodi, one of my other big political teachers and mentors. And the two of them were in the room working with a team of the 30 of us. And that's where the beginning, and Lachisa and I always stayed close. And he was making, supportive suggestions and guidance on, listen, your team and you need this and that. And I trusted him. He's a trusted advisor and much loved mentor. And he's a Gestalt trained practitioner. And that's where, I fell in love with the potential of, working with a Gestalt orientation. And I got interested to learn more, and Chantal hooked me up, and gone on many different training programs. The late Edwin Nevers called me a groupie because every opportunity I would get myself to Cape Cod for a number of programs that was run there. My own coaching practice, being trained in the Gestalt, coaching, integral coaching, and just my love of learning. One cannot lead without being a good learner. Mm-hmm. So, that's how Gestalt found me, to help become a more integrated leader. A more self-aware leader. How to make a difference of my presence with greater intentionality, how to measure, how to calibrate my impact using my presence.
And how has your contact with the Gestalt community, Gestalt people, Gestalt trainings, how has it affected you as a person?
Transformed me. It's still transforming me. It's helped me to attend to all the parts of me and own all the parts of me, and relax into all the many different parts of me. I like the me more because of getting in touch with and playing with and applying, because Gestalt is not a theory and as a practice. It's a way of being. It's part of me. The learning is increasingly sinking into my bones. It has significantly equipped me and empowered me to understand my gifts and how I offer it, to own my shadow, and work with it from a place of it's part of me and managing when and how it gets in the way of what can be, the most optimistic stance of what's possible here. It's helped me to heal family relationships. It's helped me to become more patient with myself and understand the biggest learning that I had, the biggest resistance to in my Gestalt growth was people are doing the best they can. And that freed me up to really see what are people doing well, so that I can be less judgmental and get out of my own way and have more empathy in doing the work.
So I'm hearing that you have been all the way up and down the scale of power and influence, from government to corporate to family to personal relationships. Where do you want to go now? I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing with all of this? Because if you've shaped politics, policy, I mean, where have you not had influence? What's left? Or what are you choosing out of all of the places that you've already been?
I asked a few when I was in my late 30s, when I was exiting the high-profile political appointed role. I was feeling an in-between moment and space. And I had a consultation session with the late Edwin Neves in Portugal. And we sat and I said to him, I don't know how to approach my next. And he asked me one question. He said, where would you make the biggest difference? On the inside of systems or on the outside? Are you going into the life of a consultant, or are you looking for a way where you can work inside of systems, either embedded in the system or on the outside of a system? And on my trajectory, those. So in answering his question instinctively in the moment, I knew the answer and I blurted it out. I said, inside of systems, that's where I have the greatest impact and make the greatest difference. And that's true. It's been through then, it's through now. So looking at the work that I've had the great pleasure and privilege of doing almost 4 years now in helping to wake up a sleeping giant within large systems. I love working in large systems. That's where I'm doing my best work. And I'm feeling, you're right, what you said earlier about the sense of peak. I'm doing my best work right now because it's bringing all of what life has brought me to, and it's somehow deploying it in ways that, creates growth and facilitates learning and growth in larger systems. And part of my gifts are, I'm very effective at collaborating and building good relationships and partnerships. And I can make things happen, right? Being resourceful in various ways, and connecting dots in new ways. So I'm having fun with that. So if I'm imagining my next is doing more of what I'm doing right now and plotting my next, I told you I'm based in Pretoria. My family, Cape Town is my home. Cape Town is where my heart is. My family lives in Cape Town, so I'm living the satellite life between Pretoria and Cape Town. And I've been doing it on many different stretches over this past, 2 decades and so. And it has benefits to it and it has a cost. My husband and I are doing the work that we love. He's doing big work on the continent, traveling a lot. I'm doing the work that I love. And we're missing each other often, right? Missing my grandchildren. So I am looking at, how do I get myself home? And it's this love affair that I have with the work that I do, right? And knowing, the love affair that Shuaib and I have, that we have made an agreement very early on in our marriage that we will never stand in each other's way for the work that we need to do in the world, right? And creating and holding space for each other to do that. And we're growing older. And Shuaib, the love of my life, is almost using, if I'm 38 years in this wheelchair, he's 48 years in this wheelchair. And neither of us thought we were going to last this long. We've enjoyed tremendous health by the grace of our Creator. So time feels more precious, is more precious. So I'm mindful of what else I want to do in the system where I'm currently engaged. And not restless, but having my eye on, more of, doing more of this work that can meet my needs of independence, variety, and meaningful work. And I'm plugged into a couple of spaces that's very nurturing. I'm serving on the faculty of the Gestalt International Study Center. Gestalt Africa is growing beautiful work with John and Kum and Chantal Wiley and, Jeremy and Michael. And that's an important community, of growing Gestalt practitioners. In the very institution where I am, John, Chantal, myself have grown a new cohort of Gestalt practitioners. We've taken them through an 8-month intensive program of fast-tracking them as Gestalt interveners in the system to help me be a multiplier in the system of doing the work. So that we take great pride in. We've delivered our first pieces of work just, a week ago. And we're now gearing up for the next big phase of work, working at executive level, and mobilizing. So, yeah, doing more of that. And, yeah, issues of security is important. Issues of financing my retirement is important. So those are considerations that's important of, looking at being choiceful about my next. I'm no longer at the age and stage where I can vote with my feet, where I'm going to choose the next boss. I love being my own boss. And having space and freedom. So when you asked me earlier, what do I need to feel safe and fully myself? I need roles that give me the freedom and the room to make magic with other people. And I will always gravitate to those kinds. And when the space closes down on me, I'm out of there.
I'm hearing a very strong need for autonomy.
Yes.
I mean, the good thing is you're not restless, right? This is just you, normal, sort of resting, holding pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine what you would be like if you were feeling caged and restless. That would be a lot of intensity.
Yeah.
I have to ask though, where did the grandkids come from?
Yeah. Oh, wow. So in 2000, Shoaib and I became parents under very tragic circumstances. We've tried to become parents for a while, and we went on our holy pilgrimage to Mecca. And I've always wanted to go on pilgrimage since I was a little girl. And at the age of 30, the two of us went. And one of our many long list of prayers for ourselves and everyone else was that Allah grants us a child. And the Monday we came back from Hajj, and the Friday of that week we became parents. Sadly, my sister passed away in a car accident, and her young son became our son. And I had this desperate need to hear from her how to raise a son, because I wasn't going to allow anyone else to raise him. And, 5 days after she passed, early morning, before early morning prayer, I have a dream about her and I hear her voice. And she says, just raise him, his soul belongs to God. That's all that you need to know to get on with this job. And I knew what that meant for me. And I could give myself permission to say, okay, I can now start. And I never allowed him to call me mommy because, she's his mommy. And yeah, he was 9 years old at the time. He's our son. He's 33 years old now. We've got two beautiful grandchildren and a beautiful daughter-in-law, 8 and 3. And they are Shoaib and I, our nicknames for them is Bliss and Joy.
Oh.
Yeah. He didn't consult me in making me a grandmother, so it took me a while to adjust to being a grandmother. And I never, when I played with Hania when she was just a few months old, I would never refer to myself by name when I played with her. And I love playing with her. And finally, one day, they came to visit and I sat them down and I said, Hania, I have an announcement to make. Her name is Hania. And the parents said, oh, this sounds serious, Hania. You better listen up. And I said, you can refer to me as Mama. I'm your Mama. I have finally gotten over myself. I'm your Mama. Okay. And I can now refer to myself in having stepped in.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm a besotted grandmother.
That's wonderful. So that's where the grandchildren came from.
That's where they came from. Mm-hmm.
And after listening to all of the things you were saying at the beginning, it seemed like an overly simplistic kind of question, but it's one that I ask because I'm often surprised by just the way people frame their own answers. So I would like to ask, how have you come to understand and experience power and privilege in your life?
When you made the observation about my high need for autonomy, and in the break thinking, something became connected and more clearer to that in answering your question now. My relationship to my high need for autonomy is directly related to my relationship to power and power over, right? And so I have a complicated relationship with power because I need to be extra mindful and self-aware to not be blinded by how I consciously and unconsciously work with power, not just in formal roles, but how I use my own power, right? And the impact of my presence, because I needed to become aware of how the strength of the intensity of how my power can come across and impact people, and how it can serve and how it can hinder and get in the way. So much of my own personal growth and continued personal growth is being aware of my internal paradox, that I'm very comfortable in my own power and I would resist hierarchical power, hence my dance with autonomy. So a breakthrough for me in my own therapeutic work was understanding that every relationship I've ever had with a boss, this dynamic of power played itself out. Because I'm counter-dependent, right? And every boss that I have, and particularly if the boss meets my own intensity, and if the boss, have their own needs of being high on control, we're going to have a very particular kind of conflict manifesting in our relationship, right? And that was an important breakthrough for me of understanding my own counter-dependence, where and how it came from in my own childhood, and how I've carried that through my adult life into every role, in every, relationship, and how I play that out. And, I'm either liking to stand outside on the periphery looking in, and if I'm going to be in relation, I'm going to need to work hard to co-create a healthy relationship, given my counter-dependency orientation and inclinations. So I'm mindful about how I bring myself into power and to manage my own blind spot, that it's easy for me to exercise power, but I would resist, power, being exercised in my direction. So that was an important, big learning for me in how I need to manage and navigate myself. And privilege. I'm so aware of my own privilege as a woman with a disability. The only reason why, amongst others in the lives that we live, that I can enjoy 38 years of relative health, great health, is because I have access to resources. I have access to a job. I have access to the quality of healthcare. I have access to an education that helped me to navigate the word with words, and to argue and to, intervene and assert. And I'm deeply aware of many other women from backgrounds like me or worse, that have their dignity compromised on a daily basis, that do not have the access to the means and resources and spaces and places that I've had. So I'm deeply aware of that, and don't take that, or I hope I need to learn more of not taking that for granted. inequality has manifested itself in so many different ways, so that privilege's got a lot more nuance to it, and not just, in the usual suspects in terms of race, class, gender, disability, sexual orientation. So that for me is one of the big primers for me about my own dance was privilege. And, and if I look at my own, family relationships, I'm my father's first child out of 12 from 4 wives that completed matric, the final year at high school. I'm the first one that went to university. And, their sacrifices have made, my access to privilege in terms of education and other spaces of entry that other people have opened doors for. Yeah, let me pause there, Heather.
Yeah. You okay?
Yes, I'm good. Feeling a tremendous sense of gratitude, tremendous gratitude for all the favors that beautiful people have showered me with, and opportunity and circumstance.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I am sitting here very much appreciating and feeling very grateful for you sharing some of your complexity and your intensity with me. Quite a first conversation to get to know someone. And I'm wondering, is there anything else that you would like to bring into this conversation in particular?
I feel complete.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. And I have to say that I really look forward to meeting the people who have had you as a teacher and a mentor. I am very, very curious to see what your legacy is going to develop into.
I'm insignificant. I am just, I love just being able to be a small part of someone else's success.
Mm-hmm. You're just being you. That's all. All right. Well, thank you. I will leave this recording here then.
Right. Thank you, Heather. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much for a great conversation. There's many pieces that